DepEd TV. It's a brand new day, a brand new chance to learn. I am Ma'am Berry, and I am very excited to bring you today's lesson. So set your mind, ready your heart, and brace yourselves as we explore the world of oral communication. For this episode, we will talk about the models of communication. What are different models of communication? How do they differ from one another? What is its importance in understanding the communication process? Let's figure them out all together. But before we begin, let's first have a recap on what we discussed in the last episode. Previously, our lesson was about the nature and process of communication. Let's talk about the key concepts of the lesson. You are seeing a word pool on your screen right now. Complete each of the following statements by choosing the correct word from the word pool. This activity may be found on page 14 of your module. Let's begin. Blank is a process which follows a certain procedure, which is referred to in this statement. Correct! The answer is communication. Let's have the second statement. Communication occurs between two or more people. The blank, or source of the information, and the blank. What do we call these two people? Yes, communication occurs between the sender and receiver. What about this next statement? It can be articulated through blank or spoken words. How else can it be articulated? That's right. The answer is written words. Let's proceed to the next statement. It can also be expressed through gestures, facial expressions, or actions, which are blank where words are not needed to understand what one means. What do we call the message which is expressed through gestures, facial expressions, or actions? Perfect! It's nonverbal. Let's take a look at statement number 5. Blank is the process of interpreting the encoded blank of the source by the receiver. What do we call this process? And what will be interpreted by the receiver? That's great! We call this the process of decoding, which is the process of interpreting the encoded message. Now for statement number 6. Communication also functions to control blank. Which of the following can be controlled? You got it right! The answer is behavior. Let's have one last statement. It blank or encourages people to live better and allows individuals to blank with others. What do you think are the answers? Precisely! The answers are motivates and interact. You did well. Let's now carry on to our next lesson. Look at these jumbled letters. Can you arrange them to come up with the idea being portrayed in these pictures? What do you think is the answer? Aren't you just amazing? Yes, the word we are looking for is model. A model is a pattern or framework that we follow in order to fully create a construct. Whenever we cook a new meal, we look for a model. However, this cooking model is called a recipe. Whenever we are asked to write a school paper, we always look for a model. But this model for writing is called a format. Whenever we are asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? We always look for a model, a person whose footsteps we want to follow. This person is what we call a role model. Models are everywhere, and they are used in almost everything. The same is true with communication. We need models to understand better the process of communication in every different situation.
There are three different models used in the communication process:
Linear, interactive, and transactional. Let's start with the linear model. What is most common in a communication process when you're listening to a radio program, reading a newspaper, watching a State of the Nation address, or listening to a priest's sermon? That is right. In all of those situations, you cannot give direct feedback to the sender. Linear model of communication is a one-way process. In this model of communication, the sender transmits the message to the receiver through a channel in which the receiver has no way of responding to the given message. An example of this model of communication is Shannon-Weaver model in 1949. This is what Shannon-Weaver model looks like. This model is considered as the mother of all communication models. As clearly seen in this model, it is a one-way process. It starts with the source or the sender, passing through a channel in which there are signals adapted for transmission, which may at times be interrupted by noise, which is considered a barrier, to a receiver who then decodes the message. The process stops after the message
has arrived at its destination.
One best example of a communication situation for this model is us. I acting as the sender and you as the receiver. This television serves as our channel. When you have finally understood the lesson I am discussing, the message then has arrived at its destination. As for the second model of communication, we have the interactive model. Let's watch this.
Hey bro! How are you? I'm fine, thank you. That's good to know.
What can be noticed in this video clip? Correct! In the given situation, there are two people talking to one another. Interactive model of communication is a two-way process. Unlike the linear model, here, feedback is given by the receiver to the sender. An example of this model of communication is called the Scrum model in 1954. Let me show you what a Scrum model looks like. In this model, there is an exchange of thoughts and ideas from the sender and the receiver. What we are seeing is a cycle. In this model, all 5 basic elements of communication are existing. The process of encoding and decoding are key components of this model. The receiver must be able to send feedback to the sender in order to complete the process. Otherwise, the communication transaction will fail. One best example of a communication situation for this would be a heart-to-heart talk with your mother, father, sibling, or best friend. You get to have your time to speak, and you both take time to listen and understand one another. Because that's how communication is supposed to be. Now for the last one, we have the transactional model of communication. Let's watch this. With that video clip, what can you say about the transactional model of communication? Yes, evidently, there are many senders and receivers in the given situation. And aside from that, noise can be heard everywhere. Let's take a look at the transactional model. Transactional model of communication is a circular process of interaction among people. These people actively participate in a communication situation and are actively exchanging messages amongst each other. As seen in the model, the communicator or the sender encodes the message and transmits it through the channel. The message transmitted may be affected by the noise, which is a barrier. The receiver then decodes, processes, and filters the message for understanding and is now ready to give its own feedback. Do you ever miss going to school, attending classes, and listening to your teacher while the
The siren of an ambulance is booming from a distance. The rustling of leaves from the tree right by the window.
This communication situation is a great example of a transactional model. We get to live it day to day. And there we have it. Those are the different models of communication. Once again, let's enumerate them one by one. First, we have the linear model or the Shannon-Weaver model. Second, the interactive model or the Scrum model. And lastly, we have the transactional model. Now it's time for an activity. Open your self-learning module on page 21. Let's do activity A. You are seeing a Venn diagram. You will write the similarities and differences of the three communication models that we discussed earlier. On these parts of the diagram, you will write the unique features for each model. For these parts of the diagram, you will write the similarities of a linear model to an interactive model and a linear model to a transactional model. For this part, you will write the similarities of an interactive model to a transactional model. Lastly, for this part, in the middle, you will write the similarities of the three models of communication. Your answers in the Venn diagram may vary. However, it may be answered in this way. Linear model is a one-way process. This is also known as the mother of all communication models. Interactive model is a two-way process. There is an exchange of messages from the sender and the receiver. Transactional model is a circular process. A group of people actively participates in a communication situation. Linear model and interactive model are similar in terms of the importance of decoding. The process of communication for both these models will not be deemed successful without the proper decoding process. Linear model and transactional model are similar in terms of the existing barrier, which is noise. It may disrupt the process of communication. Interactive and transactional model are similar in terms of feedback. Both these models of communication require a response. Lastly, all three models of communication require the three basic elements of communication in order to work: the sender, receiver, and channel. Read each item carefully, then choose the letter that corresponds to your answer. Write your answers on a separate sheet of paper. Number 1. Which of the following is an example of a one-way communication model? A. The Philippine president delivering his SONA. B. A group of teenagers planning for a big event. C. The committee finding ways
To reach out to the less fortunate in their barangays.
Or D. Both A and C. Number 2. You ask your sister to put on her mask every time she goes out, and she nods in reply. Which model of communication is presented here? A. Linear. B. Interactive. C. Transactional. Or D. Conversational. Number 3. Which model of communication portrays a multi-layer of communication processes where the characters and environment change over time? A. Linear model. B. Interactive model. C. Transactional model. Or D. All of the above. Number 4. Which communication model focuses on the message sent to the recipient? A. Linear model. B. Interactive model. C. Transactional model. Or D. A combination of A and B. Number 5. A strong wind struck as Arnold and his father took turns in pulling the fishing boat to the shore. Arnold cannot hear his father's voice, which affects the flow of the communication process. A. Boat. B. Wind. C. Father. Or D. Arnold's voice. Number 6. Myra submitted her report to her teacher online because of the enhanced community quarantine. Which element is missing in the process? A. Channel. B. Receiver. C. Feedback. Or D. Encoding. Number 7. The enhanced community quarantine frightened many people here and there. On his social media account, Joshua posted a status of dismay. Many supported his claim, but others opposed it. His status acquired 100 reactions, and the comment thread rose to 75. What model of communication is exemplified? A. Scrum model. B. Interactive model. C. Transactional model. Or D. Shannon-Weaver model. Number 8. In the situation given in number 7, what element of communication is not present? A. Barrier. B. Channel. C. Receiver. Or D. Feedback. Number 9. Which of the following is not a purpose of communication? A. It paves a way to conflict. B. It narrows down issues and addresses it.
C. It offers solutions to community problems.
Or D. It connects the gaps among persons involved. Number 10. What happens when the message is not clearly conveyed? A. The communication continues. B. The situation will never change. C. The communicators end the communication process. Or letter D. The recipient may get the wrong information to share with others. Are you done? Let's answer each number. Number 1. Which of the following is an example of a one-way communication model? The answer is A. The Philippine President delivering his SONA. We do not have a way of responding to the President when he is delivering his SONA. Number 2. You ask your sister to put on her mask every time she goes out, and she nods in reply. Which model of communication is presented here? The answer is letter B. Interactive model. There is feedback from the receiver to the sender. Number 3. Which model of communication portrays a multi-layer of communication processes where the characters and environment change over time? The answer is letter C. Transactional model. In transactional model, there are active participators in the communication process. Number 4. Which communication model focuses on the message sent to the recipient? The answer is A. Linear model. In linear model, its essence is to have the message arrive at its destination. Number 5. A strong wind struck as Arnold and his father took turns in pulling the fishing boat to the shore. Arnold cannot hear his father's voice, which affects the flow of the communication process. The answer is letter B, wind. Wind served as the barrier to communication, causing Arnold some problems in hearing his father's voice. Number 6. Myra submitted her report to her teacher online because of the enhanced community quarantine. Which element is missing in the process? The answer is C, feedback. It was not indicated that the teacher responded to Myra. Number 7. The enhanced community quarantine frightened many people here and there. On his social media account, Joshua posted a status of dismay. Many supported his claim, but others opposed it. His status acquired 100 reactions and the comment thread rose to 75. What model of communication is exemplified? The answer is letter C, transactional model. It was shown that there are many people who are part of the conversation online. Number 8. In the situation given in number 7, what element of communication is not present? The answer is letter A, barrier. Basically, there was no barrier indicated in the situation that caused any disruption in the communication flow. Number 9. Which of the following is not a purpose of communication? The answer is A. It paves the way to conflict. Conflicts may exist in any kind of communication situation. And last number 10. What happens when the message is not clearly conveyed? The answer is letter D. The recipient may get the wrong information to share with others. Let us make sure that our message is sent clearly to avoid misinterpretations. Were you able to get all the answers? That's terrific! Students of the Philippines, we have finally discussed the different models of communication. You have done a great job. Now, before we end this episode, I have one last question for you. Which among the 3 models of communication is the most effective? Justify your answer.
Post your answer on your FB page on the DepEd Philippines Facebook page.
Using the hashtag #DayReminder so I can easily see your answers. The best answer will be featured on DepEd Philippines Facebook page. On our next episode, we will talk about the barriers to communication so we can learn how to avoid them. Once again, this is Ma'am Derry, bringing you lessons on communication and leaving you with a day reminder: don't just speak with your mind, speak with your heart. Ciao!